Greetings, Hotep. I hope everybody's doing okay, and welcome to Matters of Diversity with Dr. B. Today is going to be another exciting podcast in which I bring on a very close colleague of mine, Dr. Reshawna Chapple. She's going to be able to talk to you a little bit about what it is to be a Black female working at the University of Central Florida, but also in social work. She is an associate professor in school of social work at the university here. She is a critical race social justice scholar. We're going to tap into that today, whose areas of clinical practice and research include intersectional identity. Think about that. Intersectional identity, mental health disparities, and access to culturally responsive services for Black women. All right. So yes, I can even have her here next month. We might have to bring her back. We have to bring a bunch of women back next month during Women's History Month. But today is a part of our Black History Month series. She's going to talk about what's going on for Black women, deaf women, and other marginalized communities. She received her BSW and MSW and her PhD in social justice from the Arizona State University. And so without any further ado, I want to bring on Dr. Reshawna Chapple. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for that introduction. It's wonderful to be here with you today.
Well, it's good to see you. Look at you smiling and happy and got all these creatures behind you. Tell me about
the they're holding me down. My people in the back.
So is that a gremlin? What is that?
Those are I collect baby Yodas and I collect Tianas. So you see some baby Yodas and some Tianas. There's also a Black. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's a baby Yoda.
Yes, that's a baby Yoda. And for baby Yoda
fans, about me is I don't do movies.
Okay. Wow.
I am not a movie buff. I don't go and do all that. So when I saw that, I mean, actually, I was going to a box yesterday. Do you remember the Furbies?
I do.
I have a Furby from back in the day.
I'm going to send you a couple dolls. I think.
Oh, are you now?
In the world, yes. I also have a Shuri back there from Black Panther. Black Panther's sister's name is Shuri.
Oh, I did see that movie.
My dog is actually named Shuri as well because Shuri is Black with white face paint, and I have a black dog with white stripe down the front. So I named it Shuri. But you know, I like cutesy things. So a lot of people ask me why I have like so many dolls and different things. When you work in, I spend a lot of time working in trauma, and when you work in different areas, there's certain ways in which you can kind of practice self-care. And for me, I like to look at things that make me smile. And so that's why I have so many dolls.
Hey, you look different. There's something about you. This is glow. What's going on? What happened? What is going on right now, Dr. Chapple? Because you are bringing me some kind of energy.
Well, thank you. Well, I found out my new house is closing, so I got a close date. So that's probably what that was. That happened this morning. So I got done fighting with mortgage people. But I think 2021, I'm just trying to be a little bit more zen, trying to practice self-care a little bit more, and continuing to work with people who need help.
All right. Okay. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about today, and we don't have to do it right this very second, but was about Black women and how that kind of intersects with being deaf and what deaf women go through. Is that something that we can kind of tap into today? Is that
we can tap into that a little bit? I think it'll really work too with the intersectionality. You know, I heard you kind of thinking about that or talking about that a little bit in my intro. So a little bit of a background. I became a social worker because my oldest daughter is deaf. And it was really interesting I found out she was deaf right before she turned a year old. And I had a really amazing social worker, but I didn't know that person was a social worker at the time. I just, I'm trying to figure out what to do with this deaf baby, basically. Right. No one in my family was deaf. I didn't know what to do. And I later find out that 90% of deaf people have hearing parents, just a fluke. But, long story short, as I'm trying to educate this child that everyone keeps, looking at with pity, right. She's Black. she's female, she also has a disability, she's deaf. It started occurring to me that, you know, all of the things sometimes that people put on other individuals, the way in which we marginalize people and the way in which we see them, doesn't always have to do with the way they see themselves. You know, because I'm raising this child who was amazingly happy all the time, outgoing, much more outgoing than my hearing child, right? I have a child who's hearing who's much more shy. This person's outgoing, out there. And once my husband and I learned sign language, the kid did not know that they had a disability or that they were supposed to act like they had a disability. And so that became later my area of research, expertise, just looking at the intersection of race, gender, and disability.
So that's a really interesting statement you just made. Did not know. And I mean, I think about that when I think about race and culture and how people don't know about other people and how they treat people badly because they don't know, right? But you just brought up something that's really interesting. You said she did not know that she had a disability.
Yes, because we didn't treat her.
She had no reason to know.
Absolutely, no.
That she had a disability. How did that realization change her once she did know that?
It was interesting. The reason that I study intersectional identity, and I don't know if it, you know, people talk about the chicken and the egg argument. I had a 15-year-old teenage mom, and my family, even though I came from, a teenage mom, my mother's family was very supportive of me. So I didn't realize that, again, I'm supposed to have a kid as a teenager or whatever. I'm supposed to go into this cycle. Because I was always told that I was smart and I was pretty and I could do whatever I wanted to do. And it wasn't until I kind of got out into the world where people were like, you shouldn't have this self-esteem, right? Literally, you should be doing this because this is where you came from. And I think, with that, if we believe things happen for a reason, I then have two children. One happens to be deaf and the other one happens to identify as, non-gender, so LBGT child. With both of these kids, I just seen them as my kids and, asked them what they wanted to do with their life. And we kind of went from there. But if we think about my older daughter, the one who's deaf, she basically knew she was deaf, but when she was younger, I made sure that she met other deaf adults so that it wasn't something that she couldn't see herself growing up. And so as she went through high school and through college, she actually now has a master's in social work. She's a social worker as well. It came to grips with her having to understand that she was a deaf woman and then that she was a Black woman and how the world would view her in terms of whether or not she could get a job or whether or not she was able to go through school or whatever. And I would just have these conversations with her, asking her what she wanted to do. What do you want to do? And let's figure it out. And what I did is instead of saying you can't, I said, let's try to accommodate it. And so that kind of became, who I am now as a social worker. I will sit down with somebody and say, okay, what's going on with you? What is your biggest challenge? And what are you trying to accomplish? So then that way we can work out an accommodation.
Wow. That's deep.
Thank you.
That's very deep. And so when you think about your work and what you've accomplished, you are now an associate professor here at the university. You worked hard to get there. Mm-hmm. What has your life been like getting to this stage, getting to what most people call the pinnacle, right? Getting the associate status and that tenure is the pinnacle of success. So what's life been like? You've been now associate professor, what, 1 year now?
Coming up on
the end of, yeah. So what's that like?
Well, I haven't been on the university as an associate professor because of COVID. So I don't know, but I will say this. It's interesting that, people have told me that this is where I'm trying to get. And I think I'm trying to get, you're a full professor. I'm trying to get somewhere else. But to be perfectly honest with you, what it's done is it allowed me to see why so many people struggle to get to promotion and tenure.
Okay.
Because like I said, you said it, my research is on Black deaf women. Whenever I say that to people, they're like, huh, who? Where do you find these creatures, right?
And then also they add to it, or they don't add to it, but they're thinking it. How did you get tenured with that as your research agenda?
Absolutely. So there's all of these things in which, if it's important to you, you have to be able to sell it, and you have to be able to define it for people who don't understand it.
Nice.
I think the hardest thing is for many of us, if we don't see ourselves out there, we don't see an example of someone else doing the work we want to do, we either change our work to try to match theirs, or we believe that we can't do it. And so for me, it was a little bit of a struggle, because my department, believe it or not, social work is not very diverse. My college is not very diverse. And so I believe I still am the only Black person in my entire college that holds a title of professor, any, associate, assistant, or full. Mm-hmm. There aren't any tenure track people in my college who are Black.
Yeah.
So, with that, trying to define working on Blackness, working on disability, the intersection of, and not having a population that I could, generalize or, put it in a broad term, like to do quantitative stats on. I do qualitative data. It was really a difficult type of thing. So a lot of the times when I tried to publish with somebody or collaborate or whatever, they would either think that my work was, wonderfully exotic, or I actually had a couple of people tell me I wouldn't get tenure because they just understood.
So that's why I didn't want to go personal here. I remember us having conversations over the years about treatment and getting tenure. And I think, if I don't want to be giving up anything, but the concern of whether or not you would get tenure or not. And I said, you're going to get tenure. You're going to fight. You're going to get through this, right? And having that as your struggle, right? Like, and one of the things that you said even back then was, I'm the only person who looks like me in my college. Yeah. And you're still saying that. So how do we change that narrative? What is the message that UCF needs to get with regards to why Reshawna Chapples of the world need to be also here at the university?
I think the biggest thing is it's really hard to, I'm not going to go into a whole search committee process and all of that, but I think it's hard to feel comfortable working with someone if you don't understand what they're trying to do. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing is, and this is what I end up talking a lot about, I do a lot of diversity trainings and a lot of culturally responsive trainings and working as social workers and therapists with other people. If we don't speak the same communication style, or we talk differently, or our mannerisms are differently, then people tend to look at that negatively. Right. And so I think the biggest thing is that when you're looking to bring someone in, just because you have never thought about that area of research, or if it's not clear to you, doesn't mean that it's wrong. And I think that that's what happens a lot. People are very comfortable with people who they can work with, do the same research with, collaborate with, or who they definitely understand their area of research or teaching. Right. And if you don't understand that, I think that it is really, really important for our senior level, our senior level professor folks and our administration to actually, take a minute to listen, to try to figure out with more of an open mind of what is that work, right? So to me, what I did was I strategically said, okay, if no one understands what I'm doing, let me look at what the requirement is for tenure. And then let me go ahead and publish what I need to publish or whatever, and collaborate with people in ways in which, I can help them with their work and also still be able to get my stuff on there. Some of my stuff I publish solo, but I just recently, a couple of weeks ago, published something for my dissertation from 10 years ago, right?
Congratulations.
Thank you. I put my dissertation aside because the goal was to get tenure and to tell a story that people understood. Now, you can tell when I talk about Black deaf women and when I talk about this type of research, I get so excited because I'm so passionate about it. But if I couldn't tell the story that needed to be told, then I was, willing to put it aside. And so those was a choice that I made.
Okay. All right. So you've done some amazing things, especially when it comes to dealing with deaf women. Um, you were able to kind of talk from your own personal narrative, but you were also able to get it to a point where you got tenure.
Yes.
How does it relate? How do we get people to understand why being specific
Mhm.
is actually being inclusive?
Being inclusive. That's a good question. So, as a social work professor, I happen to know that a lot of people go into helping professions. You're also educator, counselor, educator, um, usually because of something that happened in their past. Typically, when I am teaching a social worker, they'll say, you know what? I want to work with LGBT community, or I want to work with immigrants. My parents were immigrants, whatever, right? And so this is something I'm really passionate about. And what I like to say is that it is perfectly fine to
Mhm.
to have your people and to be very passionate about them. But what you also have to understand is the person next to you, they might have their people, and the person next to them might have their people, right? And so if we all cared about everyone's people, then we could all kind of move the narrative forward.
And it's funny to say it like this, but what came to mind for me just now is like, can we just all get along?
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to say
And
it
you from
that way.
LA, and you from LA, so you know what I mean when I say that.
Yes. So
It's not that kind of party.
yeah, no, I don't want to say that one. I get what you're saying, but it does sound like that. But it is a little bit of a nuance of that statement. So what I am thinking is that I'm not telling you to ignore all of the grievous things that have been done to people, but
Right.
I am asking you to keep an open mind when you're talking to them, when
Okay.
you are trying to understand where they're coming from. Because if you can try to understand where they're coming from and you can get past all of the defensiveness or whatever is going on with somebody who you might not get along with, it's a lot easier to let them know where you're coming from. So
But you know what, and that's also part of a facade, right? Is that people think that they don't get along with someone.
yeah,
They don't know the
they don't
people. They have not made the opportunity to help them understand who that person might be or what they actually stand for, right? Because that is the thing that I think hurts a lot of people, is that they haven't been socialized,
know.
right? To use that word, to recognize that who they are and what they bring to the table can be benefited
Yeah,
by
for
that.
people. Yeah, and I think it's twofold. I think it's one, saying these are my people, and and everyone needs to pay attention to this group of people. Like I hear that all the time, and I'm saying yeah, but in order for this other group of people to feel as passionate about your people, then you need to find out what their issue is as well. So if we can kind of take our people and say, look, this is what my group needs, or this is what is really lacking with this group of folks, and you're talking to someone else, and then they say, well, this is what's lacking with my group of folks, then usually what you can do is kind of get together and be able to kind of work together. What happens a lot of times in the dominant narrative is that they divide and conquer. So they divide us to say, well, if we give this to these people and we give this to these people, I know I sound like I have a PhD in social justice, but then it really will limit what people can have. But actually what it doesn't do that. If we can all say, these are injustices, these are things that we need, you may need this and you may need this, but if we can both understand what everyone needs, it's a lot more, it helps for everyone to get what they need. I want to say one more thing about that, because I was thinking, my brain is going really quick. It usually when someone disagrees with you, they haven't heard your argument and they don't even know why they disagree with you. It is their emotions that is driving them for the most part. And if we argue back and forth with them at that time, we're never going to get anywhere.
Can you say that louder one more time for the people in the back?
If we argue with them, we will never get anywhere, because what ends up happening is instincts take over and defensiveness takes over.
Yeah.
And so what the number one thing that I try to teach people, even in therapy practice or with other students, is to recognize your emotions first and to tell yourself what to do. So if you are actually, getting ready to argue with someone and you're trying to get them to understand and they're trying to get you to understand and you're both yelling, no one's going to hear anything. So what I say is, if you can just calm yourself down just enough to ask the person, what do you need or how can I help you, then typically you can actually get to the iceberg. And if you can't, you got to give it a little bit of time. But arguing is not going to help either person, and it's going to keep the division.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I think back when you said that, my mind went to, I don't want to say it wrong, but is it Charleston? No, it is, where was it in Virginia? Charleston.
Charlottesville.
You know what? It all comes together, right? So Charlottesville, when the people were fighting one another, and I was like, you're just not listening. I was like, you're just not hearing each other. There was one side of the street that was screaming, yelling about, the Confederate flag and taking out monuments. And then there was other folks over there who was yelling and screaming about Black Lives Matter. And they was just like, if you all could just, recognize that in this moment in time, what you're all doing is just protesting.
Yes.
Because you're not trying to hear each other. Because hearing each other would be that now you go in and you actually sit down and you communicate. And one of the things that came out of that was, I remember during that time period, there was this stage that was set up where both parties got up on the stage and were talking. I don't know then even if they were listening to one another, but they came together enough to have that moment in time. And I just wonder what it would take in your mind. What would it take for us to really sit down with our opposition and listen?
So it's interesting that you bring up that example. I think the thing that's the hardest with that example is the fact that there is no rational thinking sometimes in what's happening with both sides. So, and I'm not going to do the both sides are wrong and both sides are right. I think that the arguments are different, right? So, we can
apples to oranges.
Yeah, absolutely. We can go all day and talk about Black Lives Matter. But I'm going to talk about the Capitol and then come back there. So we think about what happened on January 6th.
Yeah.
There's this false equivalence or this narrative that's probably going on right now as, this whole impeachment trial is going on.
Yeah.
They're saying, well, Black Lives Matter protests are violent, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, no. When white individuals stormed the Capitol, they didn't die. Black Lives Matter people would not have even gotten to the steps.
Yeah.
Because we, as Black individuals, are perceived as a threat.
Mm-hmm.
So I think about this, there's one side that is really, really hung up on upholding power and upholding what it looks like, regardless to whether or not they actually want to hear what's happening with the other side. So I think that the very first thing that would have to happen would be that the individuals, and let's just call them white supremacists, would actually kind of stop and say, okay, why are you so stuck on keeping a monument that is racist, divisive, and shows Black people being enslaved? Why is that so important? That's the first question. And the second question is, do you actually even want to get along? because there's always these instances in which, you know, you ask the question, okay, why are you doing this? So Black Lives Matter says, why are you killing us?
So the message too becomes this, right? You say, you know, what is it that you really want? Because I don't even think that, you know, that they want to kill us. It's just that they have this narrative that they think that they're better than us. And what does that actually really mean, right?
Yeah. So if we look like we want to fight, or we look like we want to get respect, then we need to be, you know, they need to continue the narrative of holding us down. And so I think that it's really hard to think about having those kinds of conversations until the person is actually willing to admit that maybe they're wrong, or maybe they see something wrong, or that they're willing to compromise on something. So we think about now, everyone is saying that the arguments that's happened over the last few days have been incredibly compelling, right? Yeah. But 45 is still going to be acquitted. And we pretty much know that.
Right. And so, you know, you brought up the thing about what might have happened. And so pictures tell a story, right? So I'm going to show you a picture right now. I'm going to ask you what comes up for you based on what you just shared.
All right.
You see it?
I do. Thank you for sharing that. So that was BLM protest, right? So that was
2020. That's
the way the Capitol was set up.
That's on Lincoln Memorial.
Mm-hmm. So they were protecting Lincoln Memorial. They're all covered up. They're in riot gear. They're ready, right? Mm-hmm. So are you going to juxtapose that with a picture of somebody taking a selfie with a police officer? Please.
No, I'm not. I just want to show that picture right there and ask you what your thought was. I can show you another picture. Let me see. I didn't want to be too distracted, but I went to go find that one just to ask you that question. But I will juxtapose it with this one right here, if it comes up right. Did this come up?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, I think the biggest thing is that we actually know, most of us who are willing to critically think, I'll put it that way, understand where there is right and wrong. And unfortunately, I talk to a lot of people all the time, and they're like, this is the way we're doing it. And it's okay, why? Because this is the way I've always done it. Well, you know, can you adjust that, or can you think about it, or maybe that might not be the right way to do it. So I think we are starting to open up dialogue, and we're starting to understand what's happening. I do feel like the last 4 years have been pretty difficult in changing decorum in terms of how we talk to each other. But maybe what we were able to do was say, okay, if you don't listen to the fact that some of this stuff is serious, then, you know, this is what you might get. So we'll see.
So before I came on this call, this podcast, I did a webinar, and the question was asked of me similar to what we were just talking about. So today they're having the defense of the former president, and people, the question that was posed to me was something similar to this. They said, we know that they're going to acquit. What do we do with that? I mean, to not get discouraged. Absolutely. And my response was, don't get discouraged. If you already know the answer, why are you going to fret, right? We need to be about making a difference, right? So now we know what is going on. It lets us know that, what are you going to do for your politicians? Are you going to allow the same type of politicians to get into play? Or how are you going to hold them accountable if they are in play? How are you going to stop them from gerrymandering and making lines change so that other things are going on because they want to stay in power? And why do they want to stay in power? Because maybe their numbers are dwindling, right? So we see all of what's happening and why it's happening. We can choose to be upset by it and distraught or whatever, but the fact of the matter is, what's the fact of the matter, Dr. Chapple?
I think the biggest thing is that, you know, I don't want to go here with the reference, I don't want to say it wrong, but I remember George W. Bush, and I think on him very fondly now. I don't agree very much with his politics sometimes, but I think of him very fondly. in that.
Me too. I love him. And I think he's funny. I didn't think at the time that he was a funny guy.
Yeah, I did.
I was like, what in the world what are we dealing with? But you know what made that change for me? And I'm gonna tell you why I think people matter and people need to communicate and talk. Michelle Obama did that for me. Michelle Obama made me love George Bush.
I think too, what I noticed, and this is coming, putting on my clinical social worker hat, was that he wasn't necessarily a malicious human being, right? And he had empathy, maybe some bad politics and some bad different things, and I get it. But we started
bad intel.
Yeah, bad intel. We started dealing with a completely different animal, and I'm not gonna use space for that. But I started thinking about where we go and what we do, right? So on January 6th, and love Black Twitter. I know people listening know Black Twitter. If you just go back and look at Black Twitter on January 6th, all you seen was pictures of Black people drinking tea, kind of looking like, oh, we told you this was going to happen, but no one listened to us. So there was a little bit of a, yeah, we see you. But then at the same time, there's also people really scared, really hurting, and this was serious.
Right.
Right.
So that's the importance of inclusion at the table, right?
Yes.
If there had been people at the table, then maybe Dove would not have gotten it wrong with that commercial. Maybe this board would not have gotten it wrong with this or that or whatever have you, right?
Yeah. So always in hindsight, people are saying, okay, I should have, or we didn't see it. So you show us a picture and we'll say, there's no Black people in there, or there's no Latino, or we can see it.
You can see it.
We've been excluded so much. And so if you have all of the same people around, all of the same ideas, it goes back to.
So change that narrative and talk about the fact that some people are saying that now I'm not included, that I'm being discriminated against, that my civil liberties are being taken away from me.
So you mean the people that are already in power?
Yeah, tell me about that one.
Oh, wow. We don't want to go there. No, honestly though, I think the biggest thing is I seen a quote somewhere that, and I'm gonna mess it up, but basically, if you have never struggled or if you've never wanted for anything, once you actually have to work for it, it feels like you're being discriminated against, and that's what's happening. So
you better say that. You better say that word. What's that word?
What?
Say that word.
Yeah. So if you have people who are just struggling all the time,
yeah.
I hate that word struggle, but
right.
We know many of us who, are, marginalized people or folks of color, queer folks, whatever. We understand that we can't just walk in the door and be ourselves all the time. We've learned very early on to code switch, to speak properly, to dress the right way, to do all of these things, because we know we're going to be judged on appearance.
So I agree with that. And I hear you when you say that. But the fact of the matter is this, right? Nobody wants what they have. And that's the thing that I think people are missing, right? What you already have, I can care less about, right? I'm not the one who's going to come knock on your door and say, hey, give me the 65-inch screen TV. That's not what I want. That is not the equity I'm searching for. And I don't think many people are searching for that in terms of that. What they're asking for is their rightful place at the table. If I have the opportunity, I can do what I need to do to get the 65-inch TV, right? Yeah, but what you're fearful of is the message from other people telling you that I want what you have, right? So you can't connect with the fact that what you have is the access. What you have is the equity that I'm seeking and that I'm searching for, right? What you have is something that I'm not afraid to fight for, because my resiliency has already proven to you that I can be here, that I can be at this table, right? And so that's what I'm asking for, right? And then there's this thought, I think, and I can't speak for people who don't look like me, but I think there's this thought that when people arrive and people have access to, And then they're going to lose something in the process, right? So the fear is, what is it that I am going to lose, right? And nobody's coming to take anything from you. During the Black Lives Matter piece, when the 8 minutes and 46 seconds happened, there was a piece where a young lady had said something to the fact of, most people of color don't want to retaliate or bring harm or hurt to other people. They're not trying to reverse slavery, which I think is in the mindset of some people in regards to that, right? What we really want, and what people should be glad about, is equity and access. Because we're not coming out there trying to, when you think about who's hurting and harming and maiming people.
Yeah, we're not the ones that are doing it. And a lot of times when we do have the opportunity, we don't do it. There's something that you said, it brought two things came to my mind. One, I think my very first year teaching, when I was still in getting my PhD, I was doing an activity and I was trying to explain equity. Okay. And so basically what I had done was we came up with some fictional thing, and I basically had 3 students in my class. And I said, okay, we're all going to the movies, and the movies cost $10.
It's cost $10.
Huh?
Cost $10.
Yeah. No, I'm sorry. The movie costs $5. We're all going to movies. The movie costs $5. Okay. One person had $10 already. One person had $5, and one person didn't have anything. And I'm not doing it right. I want to say, no, the movie costs $10. You're right. So basically what I said was I'm going to give $10 to the person who has no money. I'm going to give $5 to the person who has $5, and I'm not going to give anything to the person who has 10. And we were talking about it, and I remember the person who had $10 just so happened to be a young white male in my class. And he became very, very upset. And I said, why? And he said, because I need to get $10, right? $10 is what you promised. And I said, no. We're all going to the movies. Like, and you don't need $10 because you have $10. And it was a really interesting thing that helped me understand what he felt is that I owed him $10, right? So it was equal.
Yeah.
Wasn't equitable. And that was part of what I was trying to teach, but I didn't understand it that way. And so I think about, if we fast forward now, there are several people, as we're debating about student loan debt and the fact that Black people in America have the most student loan debt than anyone. That's coming up, and we don't even make up the large amount of the population. Right. But a lot of people who are against student loan debt, many of them are saying, I either didn't take out student loans or I paid mine.
Wait, I got one for you. I got even one better for you, right? I had a student who, when I was in my undergraduate years, whose parents paid their way to college and still told them to take out student loans and told them to put the student loans in the bank. And over the course of 4 years, they got the interest off of those loans.
Absolutely.
Think about that. So that's
and then just pay it back.
And if I'd known better, it was illegal to do, right? In some regard, because your parents paid for you. So you took that. Having a student loan was what I was told anyway, was income-based, right? You got this because of a need, right? It was tied to your financial aid. But those are the types of things that help people get ahead, right? That's what that inherited wealth is, and all those other things that people do not have access to be able to have those things kind of fall in line, so they don't have debt, so they do have home equity and all those other things that people do not have because they have not been given the opportunity to do it. Not because they didn't want it, but because it wasn't something that
it wasn't available to them. It wasn't available to them. So, I think if we kind of take this full circle, I think the biggest thing that's happening with a lot of individuals are we're having 2 different discussions.
Okay.
So, people who look like you and I are maybe trying to get in the door, get a seat at the table, be able to prove who we are. And then other folks are saying, well, you're coming to get my job. No, I'm not trying to come and get your job. All I'm trying to do is have you see me for who I am and allow me the opportunity.
So that's a fear, right? So it's not an unfounded fear, because that we don't know what it would play out to be in real terms. But for the most part, when I say that I'm trying to make sure that we bring more faculty of color to social work, mm-hmm. I'm not saying that I'm going to go in and fire the faculty that are there. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is we need to be more intentional in our hiring practices so that we bring on more diverse faculty.
Absolutely.
We have to be more intentional in how our web page looks so that we are showcasing that we're inclusive and that we're doing the work that we say that we're going to do, because people are looking and paying attention. And who wants to go to a place where they don't see themselves represented?
Yeah.
Because they know what they're going to get themselves into once they get there, right?
And then the other thing too, I think, though, that we need to make sure to remember, and this is some of the work that I'm going to be doing in, the role coming after you, in faculty excellence, is making sure that we can retain and mentor, faculty of color, and even first generation. I'm looking at first generation faculty. So faculty
let's take a moment and applaud that. You just made me remember. Dr. Reshawna Chapple is the next Inclusive Excellence Fellow coming to the Provost's office.
Yay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So that was the first thing that I wanted to do after getting tenure, was making sure that more people not only could come to the university, but could also move up the ranks.
Nice.
And wanted to spend some time talking about, and I'm thankful to Faculty Excellence and Jana, or Dr. Jasinski, about allowing me some opportunity to talk about groups of people who everyone don't always think about. Like, I literally said, my mother was a teenager. So my mother did not finish college. My mother didn't go to college. So not only am I the first person in my family to go to college, but I'm now a professor. How do I navigate these spaces?
Right.
How do I get grants? How do I publish? How do I do all of these things when I don't have an example? And I don't also see other people who look like me in the academy doing the same type of work that I'm doing. So what it does is it either makes me think that I can't do it. It makes me try to replicate someone else that I see.
Right.
Or I just don't get tenure.
Wow. So, wow. It's just wow. I mean, I think it's important for us to have those conversations. I guess my question to you would be, how do we bring in the other facets? How do we make sure that our colleagues who maybe not see it the same way that we see it, kind of embrace this as a philosophy or a way of moving forward?
Well, I think if we go to thinking about like critical race theorists, they use a lot of counter narratives.
Okay.
So even though my colleague might see me as, another Black professor, because that's my title, they might also see me as a lazy Black woman. I'm just, throwing that out there. Who knows what the stereotype is, right? So it's really important.
Well, wait a minute. So wasn't it Mammy and Sapphire? And
yeah, Mammy, Jezebel, Sapphire. So Black people or Black women only fit into 4 tropes because of what we've seen. Aunt Jemima, people like Angela Davis, who I think is wonderful. But, we see as the angry Black woman, as the person who's going to take care of your children, or the person who is out there, the video vixen, the person who is on those videos, right? Or, the person who's on welfare. So we don't see professional Black women. We don't see people who are like, oh my gosh, her Melanie Hobson, who is
remember the controversy around the Cosby Show? And I know we're not supposed to talk about the Cosby Show, but remember having a Black lawyer and a Black doctor in the same household?
Yeah, and that's not something that is unheard of. It's just something that we don't like to use, right? So if we don't see that, or we like to point to that person as the exception. So I think the biggest thing that what we all need to do, and if we're going to do that all get along thing, is that just to keep an open mind and ask the questions, not to assume. So don't assume, ask the questions about the person. And also the people who are already here, who are always already in those positions, why don't we just take a minute to ask the person how we can help them or what they need? That might just do it.
I love that. I'm here for it. I'm here for it, and I'm excited to work with you when you change into your new role, right? So the expectation is high, Dr. Chapple.
Right. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready to bring the voice.
Say it again.
I'm ready to bring the voice.
Ooh. You know, back in the day, there was a Broadway play, and they say to other places as well. Say, bring the noise. Remember that?
Yes, I do.
I'm ready to bring the noise.
I'm bringing the voice of the first generation faculty, of the Black female faculty, of the BIPOC faculty, just the people who are underrepresented in the academy space. That, yes, we can come here, our research may look a little bit different, we may present a little bit different, but our work is still valuable.
Wow. Tremendous. So I have one more picture to show you.
All right.
And I want your take on it and how we move forward. You ready?
I'm ready.
You ready? You ready? Ready? All right, here we go. What does this young lady mean to you or to our movement moving
Actually, forward? I know who it is. Before you even show it to me, it's going to be Amanda Gorman. I knew it. I knew where we're going. Just amazing. Amazing because Amanda is 22 and has already graduated from Harvard. But I think the thing that I heard and seen when I listened to her poems was the fact that people along the way listened to her. Now, regardless to who didn't listen to her, right, people told her that her voice was valuable.
Mentored her.
Listened to her.
Yes.
And mentored her. And that's what you see. You see that. No one gave her anything special and no one did anything extra. People just
let her be.
Yes.
To find her excellence.
Absolutely.
Right? And so, for there is always light if only we are brave enough to see it. If only we're brave enough to be it.
Absolutely.
When she said that,
she said she almost left that out.
She said it several times. Right, she almost left it out. She's actually ended some of her work with "If we're brave enough to be it." So that's kind of her tagline, so to speak. So, and with regards to it, but it was ever so eloquent and poignant and just ready for the time when she said it during the actual
inauguration.
The inauguration. Yeah.
I think we needed it too. A lot of us were pretty hyper vigilant and have been for a while.
Mm-hmm. Why was her voice important at that point in time? Why, in your mind, was her voice important?
Because for many people, and not just Black Americans, there have been a lot of things going on over the last 4 years and even before that. And many of us have been told that it wasn't real or there's nothing to see here. And basically what her poem said to me, someone who is more than twice her age, was that, yes, you're right. Yes, we see it, but we can do this and we can continue to move forward here. Let's acknowledge that there's a lot of work to do, but let's acknowledge that we're ready to do it as well. So that's what I see.
Dr. Reshawna Chapple. Right. If I were to do it right, I think it's an L in there, right? Is it Reshawna L. Chapple?
L. Chapple, yes.
Dr. Reshawna L. Chapple. Is UCF ready for you?
They better be. I mean, you know, I'm about doing my business and getting what needs to be done. I am a social worker at heart, so, you know, I'll do what I need to do.
That's phenomenal. Any last minute words, anything that you want to share, anything that comes up for you, anything that you might have wanted to touch base on today that I didn't get to?
No, not really. I thank you for the opportunity. I'm excited about the work. And, you know, I've talked to, you know, people who, you know, have, just like you, congratulated me on tenure and congratulated me on the faculty excellence thing. And I just feel that I'm moving in a direction that I'm supposed to move in because I really am interested in helping provide access
Yeah.
for people. And that's something I'm just really passionate about. So this is me looking at my experience and saying, you know what, my experience at UCF has not been horrible, has not been bad, but how could it be better for other people coming behind me? And what have I learned from that experience?
And not only the people coming behind you, but the people who are already here who couldn't find the voice to make things change and make things matter, right? To improve that, right, for them as well. So I appreciate you. I really, truly do. I'm looking at all the Baby Yodas behind you, and I'm wondering, do you ever go into a store and see a Baby Yoda and let it stay there? Or does it come home with you?
People give me stuff because they know that I collect them. So, one day we'll have a whole segment on, I have a Barbie that's a wheelchair user. And, I have all these.
Actually just bought for my daughter. I didn't even open it, didn't give it to her yet, but they have this whole collection for Black History Month with Ella Fitzgerald and Rosa Parks and.
So I like things that have historical context, and I also like things that make me smile. So I kind of mix them together. It's very eclectic, my world, but
that's definitely eclectic. You got Tiana, and then you got Baby Yoda.
Yes.
And you even got baby Tiana up there. I see her up there in the show.
I do. I probably have, you can't see them all, but I probably have about 15 Tianas behind me. Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot. But I just, I like things that make me smile. When I talk about it, it makes me smile. And it helps me kind of focus on, different things. So it's one of those things.
Phenomenal. Well, thank you again. I appreciate having you here. We're going to close out for the day. I have to close out and thank our UCF Foundation office for helping support this podcast. MOD would be nothing without their support and their help. Next week, you'll be excited about this. Maybe you can come on and watch us or have questions for us. But I have the luxury of having next Wednesday Commissioner Regina Hill.
Oh, wow.
I had the opportunity to meet her and have a conversation with her a couple of weeks ago, and she's just phenomenal in her own right and what she's doing in the Paramore district and other things. So she's going to come in and talk a little bit about that angle for a bit, right? So I'm excited about next Wednesday's show. But thank you again, and I hope you have a brilliant rest of your day, weekend. Enjoy next. I guess we got Valentine's Day and President's Day coming up. So enjoy both of those, however you choose to celebrate it. It was good seeing you today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, and enjoy your weekend and your Valentine's as well. Your 2 Valentines that you have in your house.
Oh, yeah.
And your good weekend. So thanks so much.
Excellent. Be well. We'll talk soon.